to see that these amounts have been paid, because we need these projects to be completed. Mr. Speaker, one of the conversations that has been going on with the current flooding in the country and in Nairobi in particular is the question of garbage, Mr. Speaker. We have a big problem where garbage has become a very serious menace, Mr. Speaker, and it is contributing to the situation that we are seeing with flooding, because most of this garbage that remains uncollected in many areas ends up in our drainages. And
Sifuna seems not to be aware of his title because...
Mr. Speaker, before you get to the end of that statement, there is no way of me knowing you're talking about me when you start by deputy minority. It could be leader, it could be whip. So until I heard the last word in your statement, I didn't know that you were speaking about me. But thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, Mr. Speaker, I am speaking to this House on a very difficult day for the people of Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, many of our people are marooned in their homes. I have seen videos and photos of people on rooftops. Some homes have been swept away, roads have been swept away. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, footbridges in places like Kamkunji and those connecting Kamkunji to Makadara and Embakasi West, all of them have been swept away, Mr. Speaker, because of the rains that are going on. Mr. Speaker, we have a humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in Mathare Valley, and especially in Hospital Ward and Utalii wards. And at this particular point in time, Mr. Speaker, we want to acknowledge that the county government of Nairobi, for all its efforts, is overwhelmed, and we would want to be asking and urging the national government and all the national emergency services to be mobilized in order to save lives in many areas of the city. Mr. Speaker, there is a connection between what is happening now and the motion that is before this House on pending bills. One of the things that breaks my heart, Mr. Speaker, that every time we discuss problems in counties, Nairobi is always at the top of that list in terms of being the worst. Mr. Speaker, you will remember that just a few weeks ago, we were discussing the question of pending remittances to pension funds, including Lab Fund and Lab Trust. And 3/4 of the money, I think it was about 48 out of the 60+ billion shillings that was owed to the pension funds. Nairobi had the bulk of those unremitted funds. Mr. Speaker, just recently, there was a report on the number of teenage pregnancies across the country, and it didn't surprise me that, again, we were number 1 on that list. So anytime there is a problem across the country, any ranking, we are always at the top of the worst possible list, Mr. Speaker. And it is not another surprise that when we're discussing pending bills, out of the 160 billion that is owed by all the 47 counties, Nairobi has 107 billion out of that. Mr. Speaker, therefore, this motion, I want to thank the Senator for Narok, because this is a motion that is meant to come and save the people of Nairobi. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, the breakdown of that amount of 107, there is the report of the Auditor General for the year ending June 2023. Mr. Speaker, you can see that there is an analysis of the pending bills, the 107 billion shillings that we are speaking about. It is Annexure 2 of the Auditor General's report. Mr. Speaker, first, there is a lot that is made about the 20 billion shillings that is owed to lawyers alone in Nairobi. And whereas many things have been said about it, we would want there to be a process where all these bills are actually taken through an audit process. There was an attempt by the government of Governor Sakaja. When they came in, they brought in a task force to look at whether indeed those bills are payable. I know that it was shared by Senior Counsel Kamotho Waiganjo, but Mr. Speaker, there was an intervention from the High Court sitting in Kitale that declared all those processes to be extra legal, so that most of these committees were being disbanded without ever handing in their final reports to tell us whether those bills are payable or not. I want to speak, Mr. Speaker, as a senator of Nairobi, that in fact, sometimes the lawyers are lumped all together, and many claim that, many of those legal bills are fictitious. But there is a process in the Office of the Auditor General to ascertain what is payable and what is not payable. There are many good young lawyers who have done work for the county government of Nairobi, but who are not being paid, Mr. Speaker, at the expense of a few rogue lawyers and especially senior people in the profession who, Mr. Speaker, will raise ridiculous fee notes for work that is not commensurate to that payment. So that, Mr. Speaker, we need to isolate those cases where we believe work was genuinely done, people are genuinely required to be paid, and those payments to be made. Mr. Speaker, in that same Auditor General's report, we have a list of stalled construction projects or development projects in the county of Nairobi. And Mr. Speaker, you will see, we have over 12 stalled health projects, construction of health facilities at all levels of the healthcare system, Mr. Speaker. And it amounts to almost 1.4 billion shillings, pending bills. And I've given the example on this floor of the construction works that have stalled at our level 5 hospitals. If you go to Mbagathi, Mr. Speaker, there is a stalled construction project. The contractor abandoned site because of non-payment of bills amounting to over 40 billion shillings. If you go to Mama Lucy Hospital, the story is the same. If you go to Mutuini Hospital in Dagoretti South, the story is the same, Mr. Speaker. And if you go to Pumwani Hospital, the premier facility for delivery of children in this country, the situation is the same. I heard the CS for Health yesterday saying that the monies that were owed by national government to these facilities under Linda Mama program and also under NHIF had been paid. She told us to check the accounts today. As of yesterday, when she finished speaking, I spoke to the CEOs of these facilities, Majority Leader, that money has not been seen. I am also going to check with them today, yes, to see that these amounts have been paid, because we need these projects to be completed. Mr. Speaker, one of the conversations that has been going on with the current flooding in the country and in Nairobi in particular is the question of garbage, Mr. Speaker. We have a big problem where garbage has become a very serious menace, Mr. Speaker, and it is contributing to the situation that we are seeing with flooding, because most of this garbage that remains uncollected in many areas ends up in our drainages, and then you see people's homes flooding. I will give you the example, Mr. Speaker. We had a collection center that was opened at Umoja Inako. Mr. Speaker, that garbage was not meant to stay there at Inako. It was supposed to be collected from Inako and taken to Dandora dumping site. Since September of last year, because the contractors have abandoned their work for non-payment, Mr. Speaker, the garbage at Inako in Umoja has now reached the power lines. That is how high up it has been stacked. We have illegal dumping sites at places like Likoni Road, Mr. Speaker. And if you speak to the business people who operate in that area behind Kartasi Brands, there is a place on Enterprise Road where an illegal dumping site was opened there. Mr. Speaker, all of those businesses from Enterprise Road coming all the way up to Road C, to Road B, all of those places right now as we speak are flooded. People are counting very serious losses because of non-collection of garbage and dumping of soil on the riverbed in that particular area of the Ngong River. Mr. Speaker, I had a conversation one time. One young contractor came to my office. He had been contracted to collect garbage. That gentleman, after receiving that contract, went to suppliers of machinery, the backhoe loaders and the trucks, and got a loan to finance that particular project, thinking that he would be making some money and be able to pay for those equipment. Mr. Speaker, by the time this guy is seeing payment, first of all, he had to abandon work. His machines were repossessed by the financiers. They were auctioned, and of course they were auctioned at a lesser value than he bought them. And the difference between the value that he took and what they fetched in the market at the auction was being he was being asked to pay that amount. And yet, Mr. Speaker, when you go to the county governments for this payment, we have this phenomenon where if you don't know somebody to push for you payments through the county government, nothing is going to be done. Mr. Speaker, when you go to have that conversation, this young man was in tears. You go to have a conversation and you've had allegations of people saying you cannot be paid a pending bill in these county governments if you do not agree to part with 50% of the payment. These are not stories, Mr. Speaker. This is the life of many of the contractors that are in our country, and in our county in particular, Mr. Speaker. So the motion that has been brought by the Senator for Narok, I actually believe is a timely motion, and I would go a step further, because some of the recommendations that he has made here, number one, that the Senate recommends that all county governments pay verified pending bills amounting to less than Kenya shillings 1 billion by the end of this financial year, and those above 1 billion by the end of the financial year 2024-2025. When I hear my counterpart from Nyeri saying they have no pending bills, when I hear our friends in Baringo want to impeach their governor because of pending bills of 115 million, I just wonder which world is this that Nairobi cannot live in, that we can also be at zero net pending bills, Mr. Speaker. So I support the recommendation. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I have been an advocate of ring-fencing money for pending bills, as you have heard. At the rate we are going, Mr. Speaker, if Nairobi gets 20 billion shillings every year in equitable revenue, it will take us 5 years. If we are doing nothing but paying pending bills, it will take us 5 years, 5 years allocation to get to 100 billion shillings in order for us to clear our pending bills. So, Mr. Speaker, I do agree with the recommendation here that the county governments must prioritize payment of pending bills. If those bills were being paid, the garbage collectors would be working. Mr. Speaker, I forgot to tell you that if you look at the report of the Auditor General of the year ending June 2023, the number of stalled road projects, these are construction projects that include roads and ECDE, are over 50 projects, Mr. Speaker. And some of them include works that would have, that would have made the situation with flooding a bit more better than it is right now. Mr. Speaker, we have stalled projects with sports facilities as well, amounting to 64 million shillings, pending bills owed to people who are supposed to be completing construction of sports stadia in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to agree with the proposal here that county governments must prioritize payment of pending bills as a first charge on the county revenue fund. But what we don't understand is why is this not being done even as it is, because that is the law. The law is that we pay our debts first before we do anything else. Why is the control of budget allowing county governments to receive money, to continually receive money, when we know it is not going to the payment of these pending bills as a first charge on the county revenue fund as provided for in the law? Mr. Speaker, I want to make another proposal here. And this is something that I'm sure Senator Ledama agrees with. There is actually no point for any county government to begin construction or new projects when we have stalled projects that have not been completed. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Joseph Kang'ethe grounds in Woodley, there is a social hall that was begun by Governor Kidero in 2013. Up to today, between 2013 and now, Mr. Speaker, even though we have had subsequent county governments, no county government has seen it fit to allocate any resources for the completion of that social hall at Joseph Kang'ethe Woodley grounds. So why would a governor, upon election, Mr. Speaker, not prioritize completion of projects, and then you come up with new projects that are going to, again, get us into this rut that we are in? So, for instance, I have advised my county governor that, yes, he had this plan to subdivide Nairobi into 4 boroughs so that there can be better management of the city. But you don't need to build new borough offices. That is the one thing that I have told him, and I'm sure he understands, that in fact, when we have ward offices for the counties, there is no need for us to build any new offices for the county government, yet we have stalled projects in the health sector and other critical sectors, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, there is a proposal here that county governments shall only pay pending bills contained in their respective procurement plans pursuant to Regulation 52 and 3 of the Public Finance Management County Government Regulations. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the most abused areas, that county governments will request for funds. They will give lists to the control of budget saying these are the projects or the bills we are going to pay. And when the money is released to them, Mr. Speaker, what do? They do that, what the senator for Taita Taveta was alluding to, called voiding of transactions, so that they can then preferentially pay those who they have struck deals with in order that they can receive something as kickbacks. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I am a strong supporter. In fact, if today you tell me that we should ring fence all the money that comes to Nairobi County government, we start paying off suppliers and contractors, people who are working on our drainages, I don't think anybody in Nairobi would object if we were going to prioritize payment of the people who collect our garbage. I don't think anybody in Nairobi would complain if we said we are going to stop everything else, we are going to focus on this service delivery. Mr. Speaker, there is a meeting that had been called by the Office of the Deputy President for today to discuss this thing of the Nairobi rivers. Of course, for me, because I believe in the relationship between the national government and the county governments being kosher, I thought that it was a misplaced forum for us to discuss matters that are completely devolved. Mr. Speaker, we have thoughts on how we can improve Nairobi. Those of you who have traveled across the world, you see in places like Europe, their rivers are paved at the
Okay, next is Senator Chute Mohamed.
Asante sana, Mheshimiwa.